Gopal, Madana Gopal, Mohan Rupa, Madana Gopala, Mohan Rupa, Mohan Rupa, Nanda Kumara, Mohan Rupa, Nanda Kumara, Jaya Jaya Deva Hari, Jaya Jaya Deva Hari, Jaya Deva Hari, Vande Krishna Nanda Kumara, Vande Krishna Nanda Kumara, Nanda Kumara, Madana Gopala, Nanda Kumara, Madana Gopala, Madana Gopala, Mohan Rupa, Madana Gopala, Mohan Rupa, Mohan Rupa, Nanda Kumara, Mohan Rupa, Nanda Kumara, Jaya Jaya Deva Hari, Jaya Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna
So we chanted the names of the Lord for about maybe 10 minutes. But you would have found in 10 minutes, 3 things would have happened. And ask yourself that, because spirituality is scientific, you can test it. The first thing the scriptures tell us, when you chant the names which are spiritual, the names of God, you will find that there is no material hankering in your hearts. Yatra idyante katham vistas, trishnayaha prasammo yataha, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, nodvega yatra kaschana. That is the exact verse that is given in Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you want to test it, you can ask yourself, each one of you, in your own hearts, as we chanted, Bhagavatam tells us that whenever and wherever the names of the Lord are chanted, the audience will be free of 3 things. The first, whatever hankerings that we have in our hearts, and hankerings are one of the biggest challenges in our lives. It doesn't matter how young you are, and it doesn't matter how old you are. We always will hanker. It's very difficult at any point of time to say, I am peaceful. The moment we have something, we want something more. I remember when I was young, I had all these toys, and I used to tell my mother, this is enough. This is the one last toy I'll buy. And the next toy that comes, I will have to tell her again why this is the last one. And then after that, I'll tell her this is the last of the last of the last. But eventually, it was never the last. And when we grow older, we just change the objects that we want. But the same hankering remains with us. And even if we have everything in life, it is always a challenge to be satisfied. Why? Because in life, you find that our satisfaction is always dependent on an external source. The moment you are dependent on an external source to make you happy, that happiness is very shaky. If you depend on someone next to you to make you happy, 90% of the time, you will be disappointed. Because our expectations are very high, and generally speaking, nobody can meet our expectations except ourselves. That tends to happen also. So the first thing that you don't feel when you sit down and chant the names of the Lord is this hankering. Nobody feels that I need to do something, I need to run somewhere. No one feels the hankering that you feel for the rest of the day. It just stops for a while. The second thing that our scriptures tell us is nirvaira sarva bhuteshu. There is no envy in our hearts. Very important. Envy is the hallmark of a difficult society. And in this Kali Yuga where we stay, envy is always around us. We try not to be envious of others, but it is very difficult, especially when they do well. We say we want to mean well for others, but then again it becomes difficult. Sometimes envy comes out not in gross forms, but as we grow older, we become sophisticated in our envy. And sophistication means that we don't tell someone I'm envious of you. And we say, oh, this is very nice, that's very nice. But in our hearts, no, it's not so good, not so good. I can do better. Sometimes even as a devotee, we have always the challenge of envy. Supposing I think I sing very nicely. Someone else comes and sings very nicely. I may just go up to the person and say, oh Prabhu, you sing so nicely, it's so nice. But deep in my heart I say, yeah, you're good, but I'm just 1% better than you. Why? Because we feel envious. We're always comparing. If this was a wedding or a social function, we'll all be looking at each other. What is she wearing? What is he wearing? What's the latest fashion? How much jewelry? This one is a walking jewelry shop. That one is talking too much. There's no end to it. Whenever we go for social functions, 90% of the time, 90% of us come back disturbed. Either because somebody who should have smiled to us, who should have smiled at us, did not smile. Someone we knew, oh, she was very cold to me today, I don't know why. Or he ignored me totally and just went to talk to the person next to me. And all these things happen and you never get a good night's sleep after a social function. You talk about this for hours in the bed. It just doesn't end. Why? Nirvaira sarva bhuteshu. But you come to listen to the names of the Lord, you find because the Lord is in the center, nobody becomes important. No one assumes any ego. We all just are sitting before Him and we're just hearing the names. We don't have to understand the totality of the names. But the names of the Lord are like fire. Fire burns a child whether the child knows it burns or not. Fire will burn an adult even when it's aware that it can be burned. Fire is fire. And the names are the names. It's just like medicine. You don't really need to know what medicine you take. At some point it will help you. It will help you. And that's the beauty of the holy names. That's why we request everyone in this day and age, especially when you're younger. It's very hard to sit down and do havans and rituals. They have a place. But in this day and age, when we're running around, we're working from 8 in the morning to 8 in the night, and when you're studying from 8 in the morning till 8 in the night, and your parents don't let you do anything else but study, how will you develop your spiritual life? The best way to develop is just chant the names of Lord. Wherever you are, whatever condition you are, doesn't matter. And children take it up very nicely. I've seen my children and so many devotees' children. When they see us chanting, they will chant. Which brings me to the final concluding point. In order to actually establish spirituality in our lives instead of just religiosity and rituals, we have to practice it. We can't just talk about it. But sometimes people ask the question, how do you know if what we practice is bona fide? How will we know if this is correct? Especially in our Vedic culture, it's so huge, so wide, from different parts of India and different parts of wherever we come from, we can have so many variations. What's correct and what's not? We don't know. I'll give you a very simple example. There was a boy and he attended his elder brother's wedding. So he was very young, maybe 10 or 12 years old. So he sat down for the marriage. And you all know, in marriage, there's so many items in front of you, isn't it? And every item has to mean something. But of course, when we attend weddings, nobody looks at the item, nobody looks at the marriage. Actually, nobody's bothered when the bridegroom and bride is going to get married. We don't even know when something's going to happen until the tali is tied and the music goes up. That's it. So in the same way, the boy was sitting down and he was watching his brother getting married. So he thought, so many things in front of me. Then what happened was, a cat somehow got into the room. And a cat in a room with marriage implements, very bad news. So the priest decided, I need to keep the cat away. What did he do? He takes a basket, somehow or another, he traps the cat to the corner and keeps it there in the basket. The boy is observing everything and he sees the cat being kept there too. Years pass and the boy's turn to get married is present. And as he sits down for his marriage, he looks at everything in front of him. Then he turns to the priest and says, Panditji, you've got everything here except one thing. Where's the cat? The cat. The cat's not here. Because I remember very distinctly that the last item the priest did many years ago was to put a cat just under a basket at that corner. So you need to put it there. And 90% of the time, that's how we approach our culture. Someone adds something here, you subtract something there, I divide it into two, you multiply everything, or some people take out everything. And in the end, everything is acceptable. That's why, if we want to understand what we are doing, we have that knowledge, but it's available in our scriptures. They are the law books for us. All we have to do is approach them, study them. I would be very sad if one of you teenagers came up to me and said, I believe everything you say. I would be very sad. One, because I'm a lawyer and I know my training says I will never accept what you say until you show me proof. And that's the same thing you should do. Tell me, you should come up to me and tell me which part of the Gita says what you have said. And if I can produce it for you, then you will have faith. Am I right? Otherwise, you won't have faith. You'll say you're just plucking it from the air. So, to all of you, a very important thing that I have learned in my journey, don't accept everything at face value. You can test it. That is the difference between spiritual life and religious life. But when you test it and you find that there is evidence for it, then the only thing that's stopping you from practicing it is your false ego. That's the only thing that's stopping us. Or sometimes it's just sheer lack of commitment. And we say, one day I will become spiritual. Very often my mother used to tell me, you don't have to spend so much time chanting and doing this and doing that. Your studies will be affected. But when I started doing very well in my grades, she told me, keep chanting because obviously it's helping you. Keep doing it, okay? Just maintain status quo, it's fine. So very often, we always think that if we take up spiritual life, our material life will suffer. But none of us who are practicing devotional service here have suffered in material life. Actually, many of us are quite successful. Sometimes I go for programs, in houses, and after I finish the program, the host comes up to me and say, Swamiji, you came by bus, so let me give you some money for a taxi. And then I tell him, I don't need a taxi because I drove. Swamiji, you drove? I say, yes, I drove. You mean you work? I said, yes, I work. If I don't work in Singapore, I'll die. Everybody has to work in Singapore. My point is, spiritual life does not take us away from all our duties. Spiritual life and duties go hand in hand. Arjuna was a fighter. All the great devotees of the Lord were well placed in their particular vocations. Nobody resigned from anything to become a pujari anywhere. You can be where you are. If you're all students, be the best students you can be. But the only difference is instead of just working for yourself, work for the Lord. For all of us who are employed by someone, very simple. In 5:10 of Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 10th verse, Krishna gives a secret. He says, Brahmani adhaya karmani. He says, whatever karmani, whatever activities that you have, you perform it to the best. But after you have finished your work, you do nothing. Adhaya. Adhaya means you resign. Every day you sign up for your work, and at the end of the day when you have finished your work, you simply tender in your resignation letter in your heart. I've done my best. Now what is to come is between him and what I have done. And you walk away, as Arjuna walked away from the battlefield, finally peaceful. And for all of us who are working in a very difficult life, you will find this becomes the secret to work. You never compromise on the quality of your work, but you're never touched by what happens with the work. That's why the verse ends by saying, Padma Patram Ivam Vasaha. Live like a lotus in this world, Krishna says. The lotus flower, it grows in the muddy swamps. In fact, it grows in mangroves, and it grows in areas where there is mud. It's not crystal clear water. And yet the lotus that comes up is so beautiful. This world is like that. Not a very nice world sometimes. Sometimes it's alright. But we must live like lotuses. We should not be touched by the world. We should not be. Krishna always teaches us this in the Gita. And all the devatas, they also teach us that. Have you seen the beautiful deity of Nataraj when he's dancing? He has one foot on the ground, he has one foot up. What does that symbolize in Vedic culture? The foot that is down tells us that we have to be practical and live in this world. But the foot that is up says we should be in this world, but we don't have to be off this world. There is a vast difference. And if we can live this in our lives and give this to our children, as they grow up, they will also learn the art of being peaceful and being truly spiritual. So don't accept what I've said. Come and challenge. But if I find something here in all our scriptures that gives you and substantiates what I say, then it is up to you to accept it. I want to end by cautioning you in a form of a story, how very easy it is for us to just follow something whimsically and not understand it and not follow a process. People become afraid and they come to me and say, if I follow a process, that means I'm in an institution. That's the biggest problem with all of us. We're so scared of institutions, we think, oh, the moment I get into institutions is a problem. But you don't have to be part of an institution. You can take the best of an institution. An institution simply means a way of life. That's all. Every one of you is running an institution in your own house. How? You have your own rules, you have your own standards. You tell your children you must live in this way. That's your institution. But it must come from a source. So if someone from the audience sometimes says, but I heard that in Hinduism or in Vedic culture we should do this, do that. My only question to them is, give me the reference. You can give me the reference and I can read it and it is authentic and accepted by all the sampradayas, we accept it. Otherwise, don't be caught by it. Don't be caught by it. Two men were in a village and they were sitting by the ghat, washing their clothes. Then they took a bath. Suddenly they heard someone crying. They turned and looked at the far corner and they saw one man sitting down, his head shaven, and he was crying and crying and crying. And he kept shouting out only one name, Sunya Vidyadhar, Sunya Vidyadhar. When they came closer, they asked, "What has happened, my friend?" And he turned to them and said, "Don't you know, Sunya Vidyadhar has died?" So the two friends look at each other, and both of them thought, the way he says it sounds like this is a very important personality. And if I don't know who he is, maybe my friend knows. But I can't tell my friend, or I can't ask him because it looks funny. So they both looked at each other. They both had the same idea. They both never asked each other, who is Sunya Vidyadhar? They turned to the man who was crying and they said, "Oh my God, when did he die?" And he said, "Just 2 days ago he died." "Oh, this is terrible news." Then the man who was crying says, "You please tell everyone that Sunya Vidyadhar has died." So the two men walked into the village and saw the village head. The village head said, "Why are you two looking so morose?" And they said, "Don't you know, sir, Sunya Vidyadhar just died." Now the village headman thought, these two very normal people in my village seems to know Sunya Vidyadhar. I don't know who he is, but he sounds very important. Now if I show them that I don't know who he is, it looks really bad. So then he turned around and said, "Really? When did he die? How did he die? I feel very bad. I knew him so well." Then he said, "Don't worry. Because he was such an important personality, I'll declare a day off in the village. And everyone now should cry that Sunya Vidyadhar has died." Now the king's minister passes through the village. He stops and he sees an entire village in mourning. He said, "Who is the person who has died here? Must be some great personality." Goes to the village headman. The village headman looks at the minister and says, "You don't know? Sunya Vidyadhar has died." Now the minister thought, wait a minute. The village headman knows this great personality. It's such a shameful thing if I don't know. So he doesn't say anything. So he says, "Really? When did he die? I just saw him a few months ago." And he said, "No, he just died just 2-3 days ago. This is really bad." So he walks away and he enters into the court of the king. And there he proclaims and makes an announcement to the king and all the ministers. He says, "My lord, I have very bad news." So the king says, "What is the bad news?" "Sunya Vidyadhar has died." Now all the ministers look at each other and they're thinking, who is this character? King looks at the ministers and he's thinking, wait a minute. They all seem to know. I have no clue who Sunya Vidyadhar is. So the ministers start talking to each other. "Oh my God, when did he die? I feel very bad. He was such a good person." Now the king is in a fix. If he says that he doesn't know who Sunya Vidyadhar is, he doesn't look good. So he says, "Sunya Vidyadhar has died. It is a great tragedy for the entire kingdom. So we'll do one thing. Tomorrow, we will observe a moment's silence so that we pray for the soul of Sunya Vidyadhar." They all go to sleep. The king comes to his bed and the queen is sitting there. Queen turns to the king and says, "My dear lord, can I ask you a question?" "Yes." "Who is Sunya Vidyadhar?" The king looks around and says, "Frankly, I have no clue. I thought you knew. Or I thought the minister knew." And the queen says, "My lord, if you don't know, why didn't you ask?" Because he said, "If everybody else knows and I don't know, how do I look?" So she asked him, "Who is the person who told you who is Sunya Vidyadhar?" "It's the minister." "Call the minister." Minister comes. And after a few minutes of talking, minister confesses, "My lord, I have no clue who Sunya Vidyadhar is. I thought you knew. I thought the ministers know. Even the village people know and I don't know." "Call the village headman." Village headman comes. Village headman says, "My lord, I thought everybody knew in the village except me. But really, I have no clue who Sunya Vidyadhar is." So it's morning already. The king says, "Bring me to the village. Let's find out this personality, who he is. We must do justice. What I did was wrong." So they go to the village and they find these two men. And these two men said, "We were at the bathing hut and there we found a man who had shaven his head and he told us that Sunya Vidyadhar has died." And he said it with so much importance, my dear king, that we knew he was a very important person. "But did you ask?" "No, we didn't ask." "Let's go and find this man." So they went down to the hut and there he was sitting down, shaven headed, and still he was crying. So now the king said, "My dear man, the whole kingdom is only asking one question. And I think only you have the answer to this. You tell me now, who is Sunya Vidyadhar?" And the man looks up at him and says, "My dear lord, Sunya Vidyadhar is my donkey. I'm a dhobi. And he is my donkey of 20 years. He served me so well. He took care of all the clothes. He bore all the burden like a good friend. And just 2 days ago, his legs buckled and he died. And that is why, in memory of my great friend Sunya Vidyanath, I am sitting here, I am celebrating, and I am mourning. And the king thought, this is the height of our foolishness. And this is what happens when we approach Vedic culture as a ritual. We have no clue why, we don't know why, we don't know how, we don't understand the reasons for it. We hear someone say something, and we say, you know what, it makes good sense, and that's it. Never be fooled until we find out the source of our truth. And that is why, in all of this that we study, even in the chanting, test it. That's my humble request to you. I want to end by telling you that there are no answers for you until you simply test it. How will you know the taste of mango until you taste it? You can only do that. So if someone comes and says, I don't believe a word that you have said, I'm very happy. Just go and test whatever I have said. If it doesn't work, throw it away. But if it works, then think about trying it. That's all. And I think this would appeal to our hearts. This would appeal to our intellect. This appeals to our entire personality. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Shall we end by chanting another 5 minutes?
Yes.
Are we all right? Let's chant. Let's chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bol, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jai Shri Hari Ram Sankirtan Yajna ki Jai, Jai Shri Shri Nitai Gaura Chandra ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Prema